Hello, it's Michelle, and welcome to my wrap-up for the Under-Hyped Books Read-a-thon. This idea was conceived by Charlotte Jones, and her name is Ramblings of an Elfpire. I'll put a link to her channel below. It was a fabulous idea. She carried through with it beautifully. There were giveaways, there were Twitter sprints, there were live YouTube sessions that you could join in on. I loved watching all the videos and getting other recommendations. But here's what I read during the readathon. I finished 6 books, even though I had a conference during the week, so I was pretty impressed with myself. All the Truth That's in Me was the first book that I read. It is written by Julie Berry, and this synopsis has haunted me for some time, so I was glad to finally pick this up and get reading and figure out what the mystery was behind this book. It is set in early settled New England, and there's a very small village, and they all have to help each other out. Everybody's in everybody's business, but that's what it takes to survive at that time. And 2 young girls disappear, and so that was 4 years ago from the main setting of the story. And 2 years ago, one of the girls, Judith, comes back, but she's been mutilated and she cannot speak properly anymore. So the whole town is kind of up in arms and trying to unravel the mystery of what happened with the second girl, and what happened with Judith, who's to blame, things like that. At the same time, there are so many other stories going on in the village. I just thought the mystery of it was very well done. There were just shocking revelations sprinkled throughout the story, and also there is a very tender and honest love story in here that just had so many misunderstandings and seemed so realistic. I just thought the whole thing was just beautiful, and I look forward to seeing if there are any other books by Julie Berry that I might want to pick up. I gave this 5 stars on Goodreads. Next, I read How to Build a House by Dana Reinhardt, and this story follows Harper, and she is she's a teenager. I can't remember exactly how old she is. And when she was 2 years old, her mother died. And so the only family she has really ever known included her stepmother, her 2 stepsisters, and then her half-brother that was the son of her father and her stepmother together. And then her stepmother and father get a divorce. And so she's back home alone most of the time with her dad, and she's pretty depressed about it because she was really attached to her stepmother and her stepsister, and now those relationships are just strained, and it's really taken its toll on Harper. And she and her dad decide that she needs something to do for the summer that's constructive, and so she joins a program that has teenagers help rebuild a house for an unfortunate family. And in this case, they're going to Tennessee and going to rebuild a house for a family whose home was destroyed in a tornado. And she's had a past relationship. It had some issues. And of course, while she's off building the house, she meets another guy, but she has to work through all the feelings about her family, about her sort of ex-boyfriend, and just a lot of issues that she has to work through, and then what happens at the end of the summer and that kind of thing. I just thought it was beautiful. Dana just has a way of writing that just really sucks you in and makes you feel like you're in the story, and you care so much about all of the characters, even the little side characters. My favorite side character in this one was Captain. You'll see why if you end up reading it, but I highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. Next, I read What I Call Life by Jill Wolfson, and this was a fairly typical foster care story. The main thing that made it different was the leader of the group home that the young lady is sent to. Her name is Cal, and she is called the Knitting Lady. You never really know her first name. All the girls just call her the Knitting Lady. And she has a very warm house for them. They get to do lots of fun things. They go swimming, they go to the mall, that kind of stuff. But the main thing about the Knitting Lady is she teaches them to knit, and while they're sitting around knitting, she tells them stories. And the girls beg for the stories. They love to hear them. And she is just masterful at crafting stories that have a parallel to different situations that the girls might be in at the time, and to kind of help them grow and broaden their horizons. And that part of the story was just absolutely amazing to me. I did give this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I highly recommend. Next, I was going to read Torn Away, and I just couldn't. I had watched a lot of videos in the meantime of TBRs for people who were in the Under-Hyped Read-a-thons, and I thought, what is the point of this if I don't at least read one book that I had never heard of, that I had never seen hyped before all this started? So I took the recommendation of a young lady named Noelle, and I will link the video that inspired me to pick up a different book down below. And she was talking about a book called The Game. And this is the first in a four book series. And it's basically a dystopian, but it is very rich in detail, and it is pretty original as far as I could tell. And I absolutely ended up adoring it. You're sucked right in, and you automatically care about the characters from the very beginning, at least the main characters. Somehow, this author, while writing this dystopian, also gives some thought-provoking reflections on the human condition currently. I just thought that was masterful the way he was able to do that. The story does end in a huge cliffhanger. I did give this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads because at the end it was getting just a little bit preachy, and I thought it was going to turn into some kind of religious message, that isn't revealed until later. So I was a little wary of that. And did end up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Essentially, the premise in the book is the normal education system was not working for society. And so they wrote a video game that allowed young people, they start out with 5 credits to play the game. They go in, they play the game, they make choices, they take risks or not. They can buy power-ups and things like that to kind of try to affect their gameplay. But you never know what's going to happen, and at the end you either get more credits and end up being able to play more, or you kind of lose credits. And if you lose all your credits before you're 18, then your fate's not so good. If you can get through to 18 and still have credits, how many credits you have determines what kind of opportunities are available to you. So I just thought that was such an original idea. And he explains the whole workings of it so well in the story. I was just fabulously impressed. 4 stars, like I said. Then I went on to read Avalon because I was a little too afraid that book 2 in The Game is Life would end up being too preachy. So I read Avalon. And this was recommended by Lainey over at Ginger Reads Lainey, and I'll put a link to her channel below. It basically follows some teenagers who are mercenaries, and they go around stealing spaceships for their boss. Of course, it's set in space. And you love the main character, but I felt like the rest of the characters were pretty underdeveloped. I never really got a good sense for most of the crew. A little bit, yeah, like 1 or 2 little things you could grab onto, but not for like their overall personality. And I never felt like I could predict what they may or may not do. Another thing that bugged me a little about the story is it just seemed like there were no good choices for the characters, and it was always choosing between the lesser of 2 evils. And then this is a little nitpicky, but I believe there were 4 times during the story where the main character just blacks out. And then he's being revived and he's told what happened while he was out. And I just thought 4 times in the story was just a little too much for that mechanic. And it just felt a little cheesy to me. I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. I did like it, but I didn't love it. And I can't necessarily really recommend it. It seems like there might be a sequel in the future, and I'm kind of on the fence whether I would read this sequel or not. Anyway. So after I finished Avalon, I was still thinking about The Game by Terry Schott and decided that I would try to pick up the second book in that series, and so I downloaded it on my Kindle. That one was not free, however, but it was worth the money, let me tell you. I went in thinking, there's no way this can be as good as the first one, so I'm just going to get ready for the preachy story to come out more and to be disappointed so I can move on. And I could not have been more wrong. There were lots of new twists, and it picks up like right from the minute that the first one ended. So there was no like trying to figure out what happened during a gap or anything like that. Somehow this author snuck in like a 2-page summary of all the story arcs that were going on in the story. And it didn't feel clumsy, and it didn't feel awkward, and I was just in awe of how he was able to pull that off, because there were so many story arcs. It really felt necessary at that point, or at least I was happy to see it. Oh yeah, there really is a ton going on in this story. So I don't want to give any spoilers and tell you anything that actually happens in the story, but it does end on another big cliffhanger, and so I'm sure that soon you will be hearing from me about book number 3. I did give this one 5 stars, and in fact, because it did not go the preachy route that I thought it was going from the first book, I went back, which I rarely do, into Goodreads and bumped my rating up from 4 stars to 5. So, all in all, I had 3 5-star books. I had 2 4-star books and 1 3-star books that I read during the Under-Hyped Read-a-thon, and it was a total of 1,801 pages. Thanks so much for hosting it again, Charlotte. Thanks for watching my video, and happy reading, everybody!